Hey, I'm Guy Powell, and welcome to the next episode of the Backstory on Marketing and AI. And if you haven't already done so, please visit prorelevant.com and sign up for all of these episodes and podcasts. I am the author of the upcoming book, The AI Marketing Machine, and you can find out more about that at marketingmachine.prorelevant.com. Today I'm interviewing Anastasia Lasky with Ground Control Research, and let me tell you a little bit more about her. So she's the founder of Ground Control Research and creator of telemetry, and she helps creative teams replace guesswork with fast, AI-powered insights that sharpen strategy and accelerate results. She's worked with startups, scale-ups, legacy brands to define target audiences, refine positioning, and shape go-to-market plans without the fluff. Agencies trust her to bring clarity when things get muddy and to make strategy smarter, faster, and more effective. Anastasia, thank you so much. Welcome.
Thank you, Guy. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's your backstory on getting into marketing and AI?
Yeah, so I was already in marketing when AI was invented. So I came into it naturally, like most people. But I think first I started off as a user, as an individual with AI. Just what could I do with this? What could I do to explore this tool? And I'm a pretty early adopter, so I just got into it really quick. And then I started to think about what are the methodologies that I use with clients at Ground Control, and what could I do to aid those methodologies with AI? And from there, it's been a very iterative and interesting process to figure out how to bring new technology and a new tool into our toolkit, and to help clients also at the same time. Clients are coming to me for advice because they know I'm an early adopter, and they know our team is always on the cutting edge. So they come to us and say, Anna, can you teach our organization how we could get better at X, Y, and Z with AI? And I'm like, okay, let's figure it out. So that's been sort of the process, and it's culminated now with telemetry, which is our consumer-facing foundational insight service, and it's AI powered. So it's been really cool to bring that to market.
Yeah, fantastic. So tell us about Ground Control Research and telemetry. What's that all about?
Yeah, so Ground Control Research, I started about 9 years ago because I was working in Silicon Valley in tech, and essentially I had a lot of people I'd previously worked with calling me and saying, Anna, I went to a different startup and we got all these problems you helped us solve when we worked together before. Can you please help me solve these problems again? And I said, wait a minute, I would just like to solve these kinds of problems again and again for a lot of different clients. And what are the problems that we solve? We're very focused on helping companies grow. Specifically, we like to aid the process that companies use to develop go-to-market strategy or to develop foundational strategic creative materials. So if they're repositioning or they're going to rebrand or something like that, we get in there and make sure they're not going in the wrong direction accidentally because they don't know who they're talking to, or should be talking to, or they don't know what to say to them, or what is the language that's going to resonate, or the territories, like emotional territories and things like that would resonate. So that's all we do. And we do it in a lot of different ways. So yeah, that's Ground Control. And like I said before, telemetry really came out of a service that we've been doing for years and years for companies to help them lay that groundwork of fact of who is my target market, statistically, not just my guess, not just a brainstorm, but statistically, mathematically, who is the best market for this brand and the products that they offer. And then for that target market, what are all of the ways that the brand or the company needs to, what are the things they need to know to activate that market, to actually market to them successfully? How do we build that playbook with data instead of just guesswork or experience, or I think this might work? And we're basically trying to cut down the test and iterate phase to a much more efficient phase. And in the world I come from, which is startups, and we work with more than startups now, but in the startup world, you've got this thing called runway. So you don't have 12 months to just iterate and test. And so that's where this whole methodology came from. And we're just trying to point people in the right direction and give them what they need to succeed a lot faster. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're right, as a startup, you only have a certain amount of months and the money is
Right.
going to run
Right.
out, and
Right.
man, you got to get there. And the VCs are sitting there
Right.
going, I'm not giving
Right.
you no more money.
Exactly. Yeah. And conveniently, telemetry also helps like, the VCs feel a little more confident that the startup is moving in the right direction, right? So, that's sort of the plan or the way I work with clients all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you mentioned, your ideal customer and certainly your ideal customer profile, your ICP, and
Mhm.
and it's so funny. I used to a long time ago work with startups, and they always had it wrong. I mean, they thought that their ideal customer was their best friend, and it just needs to look like him.
Right.
And because he bought it, he bought the
Mhm.
first round. But in reality, you got to buy the next 100, you got to sell the next 100, the next 1,000, the next 10,000. And all of a sudden, getting that ideal customer profile is tough. So tell us about that. Tell us about what you've seen and how you've been able to fix things.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example, Guy. And I'll expand that to even say that larger companies experience the same thing, right? Like any company that's growing at a significant pace is going to have to make these sort of jumps or expansions in the definition of the target market that is the best for them to focus on right now, and for the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years of growth. So whether it's a founder-led company or whether it's folks, marketing leaders that are coming in, a little bit later in the game, they're often looking at the performance of the company right now, and they're looking at who is the customer right now and how do we get more of that kind of a customer, right? And that's not a bad approach necessarily if you haven't fully tapped into and fully like maximized that market. But a lot of organizations have really big growth goals, and those growth goals require a larger target market, right? It can't be like, oh, to your point, my target market is other Silicon Valley startup founders, right? Like there's like 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 of those people, right? Like once you tap that market, you're good. You're done. There's no more place for you to buy, to sell things. There's no more left to sell to. So what we like to do with clients is say, let's take a step back. Let's figure out, make sure you actually know who your customer is. If they have customers, if they already are generating revenue and they have a decent signal of product market fit, let's figure out who those people are demographically, psychographically, but then let's not like use that to drive strategy, which is I think the biggest mistake that a lot of organizations make is they stop there. Okay, that's what we know is driving the business today, but let's get outside of our walls and let's go and find out with pure curiosity who would be the best market for us in our category, for our brand, based on the features and the value proposition that we offer. Where is the market right now for us to focus on? And then we can actually compare those two things. And usually that is a very fascinating conversation for me to have with clients. And being honest with you, sometimes that conversation is not really well received. It can be well received, but it sometimes isn't because it can be so different. But the way I frame it is, this is your million, billion, 10x opportunity, right? So you choose if you want to go after it or not, right? And then we go through the process of how do you bridge to that new audience, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
and bridging to the other audience too is part of your creative strategy,
Right.
and that's only one phase of or one facet of the your entire marketing strategy is to definitely figure out what the messaging is and what the
Right.
creative is going to look like.
Hmm.
And and if you get the data in, bad data
Correct.
out, bad data
Yep.
in, bad creative out,
Hmm.
and getting that data right, and really going past what the impressions are of the founder. The founder usually knows, or the founding team or whatever. They have a pretty good idea, but they don't necessarily know how to articulate it in a way that can be used for developing a great creative strategy. So tell us a little bit about what you've learned there and what you're doing there.
Yeah, for sure. I think like I said, it all starts with sort of getting inside the walls of our client to figure out what do they think, what do they know for sure about what's going well, or where do they think, their market is, all that good stuff. And again, I work with a lot of brands that are a little bit past the founder stage, right? They've brought in sort of an executive team, that didn't found the company. And I think those people usually come in with a lot of great experience and great thoughts, like hypotheses about what could be true about a market. And that's part of how they interviewed for the job and things like that. And the founder, if they're still there, or that early team, if they're still there, they're kind of looking at that and going, I could be open to this. I could see this kind of unfolding in a good way. I have my own ideas. So my process and like what I do with clients is like, it's all about how do I guide you down a path that makes sense and it's data driven? So part of that path is exposing all of those hypotheses and documenting them. And so they're not just like things that get talked about randomly in meetings. It's actually like these are all of our hypotheses. And then my work and that of my team is to validate like scientifically whether those are correct or not correct, right? And oftentimes there's a little bit of nuance to it, Guy. It's not like so simple as every company has just one target market out there that they could pursue, right? There's often multiple different target markets that have sort of the foundational resonance or the interest. There's sentiment there that's really strong. And then it's about going back to that executive team and saying, these are the three directions you could go. Here's sort of the pros and cons and the strategic implications for each one. Let's have that discussion, and let's have that discussion in a systematic way so that we can, double click on the whatever audience you choose, but make sure it's aligned with your strategy more broadly as an organization and your business model.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we've been talking about challenges and solutions for startups and also then whatever you call them, scalers or scale ups.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that term before. That's a great one. I've got to remember that one.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
but one of the things that now has changed, obviously, with AI is AI can support all of that. So how are you using AI to support those insights and really give your clients then hopefully great insights, maybe even better insights than before, but also maybe even faster?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a few categories of power that I would give it around these topics. So number one is just in helping to structure things, structure written language. So I can easily now, like we do something with all of our clients before we even sign a contract with them to make sure they're the right fit. We do something called an insight strategy session where we get together and I help them get all those hypotheses around their business issue, whatever that is, out on the table, right? Prior to AI existing, I would have to go and, listen back to a recording of that, or during it, I'm not paying attention because I'm taking notes. I'm trying to document all this stuff. Now I can easily, take the recording of that call, get a transcript, and automatically use a prompt to get some really great structure that I can reflect back to the client and say, hey, this is what I heard you say. This is where we need to focus. That's what we're going to do. And then I can use that derivatively to design out, the actual research and the way we want to use our methodology for that particular client. So that ability to rapidly customize cuts down my, let's just say, turnaround time to put together, a proposal for them with a custom, research path. It cuts it down significantly. So I think teams can use that as well when they're having these kinds of, strategic conversations to make sure they're capturing that and using AI to really structure the conversation and what came out of it into something actionable. Because the biggest thing is like getting into some sort of action that we can get real fact from the outside to, to actually aid the decision-making process here.
Yeah, and I like that getting that strategic insights up front and doing a session like that because it really helps to set the stage and make sure that everybody's kind of focused on whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. And in the end, it's all about sales, I guess, and and then position. But sales, if you're a startup and you're not selling and you're not getting there, then you gotta fix your strategy, or you gotta fix whatever to get it going.
Yeah.
And quite often, though, one thing is that the creative is wrong.
Right.
And and if you haven't done kind of the upfront work to make sure that creative is right and the creative brief is done right, so that your agency can go out and actually deliver on the right message, not just a message, but the right message. So tell us how you work with that and how data comes into play.
Yeah, for sure. I'll probably sound like a broken record, but I'm a big believer in process and problem solving process. And so usually when an organization, whether that's an agency or an in-house creative team or an in-house marketing team, when they come to us and they say, hey, like our creative's not, it's kind of falling flat, or we think it could, we don't know what's not, we don't understand why it is or isn't performing, or they've just decided like we need to rebrand, whatever. They often see this as like a more tactical problem than I know it is, right? They're seeing it as like, well, I just need your help to like optimize like some of the calls to action or something, or I need you to help me optimize the funnel, like that kind of thing. And my point of view is that we really need to step back and look at why is that falling flat? Like, let's be really thorough in investigating the situation and not just say, oh, well, it is falling flat. Like that's the what, right? But the why is that happening? And oftentimes we can get some of that information and insight just by looking at analytics that our clients would provide to us. But many times the real issue is that clients don't really know who their target market should be, which I've already talked about, or they are not really, they've never actually like gotten insight directly from that specific target market. So they're kind of guessing on what to say. And it's not that it's totally wrong, but it's just not quite hitting really like, it's like, the dartboard, they didn't hit the bullseye. They hit the board, but they didn't hit the bullseye. And what I've found to be true over the years is that if we use that same bullseye analogy, you could be like in the green space, not the bullseye, and you could have your marketing not be working barely at all. Like it's really not working. And you just move that dart a little bit towards the center, and it's like an exponential effect in terms of how that shapes, the results you see in market. And so for a lot of clients, it's really about helping them just shape things, and it seems really subtle, and they're like, really, Anna? And then I'm like, just do it and see what happens, right? And then we see the result, we receive the result later.
Yeah, that is so true. And it doesn't take much, to your
Yeah.
point, to get to that exponential part of the curve. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, your results are
Yeah.
just really firing on all cylinders.
Hmm.
Now, one challenge for a brand, a startup or a scale up is that because they're small, they're generally a challenger brand. I mean, even
Yeah.
Tesla, when it
Hmm.
started out, it was a
Yeah.
challenger
Yeah.
brand,
For
although
sure.
maybe it was also the leading brand in the EV space, but
Sure.
nevertheless, it was,
Yeah.
a challenger brand.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
challenger brands have very unique kinds of challenges
They
against
do.
which to go to
Yeah.
market and really try
Yeah.
and beat out the bigger
Big
players.
guys.
So tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that and making sure that
Yeah.
they're not guessing their way; they're really doing
Yeah.
it with fact-based
For sure.
decision making.
Yeah, so like the biggest mistake a challenger brand can make, in my opinion, is basically trying to operate like in their marketing and in their strategy around marketing, trying to operate like the big guys that they want to become, right? Because those big companies, from the outside, it appears that their target markets are every woman in America or every, parent or whatever, right? Like depending on the product, depending on what's being sold, every person who could buy a car, right? Whatever. The reality of those large brands is that they have spent decades or centuries literally building one target market onto another target market onto another target market and expanding and expanding and expanding. And they do a lot of work to do target like campaigns and just whole strategies that are very specific to a sub market within their broad target market. But from the outside, challenger brands oftentimes go, well, if I could just be for every car owner in America, I will then capture all of the market of every car owner in America. And they're much more sophisticated than I just framed it, right? It's not like an intentional conscious thing, but I think it's a subconscious thing where they set a goal for revenue and they just try to back into, or unit sales, they try to back into like what would our TAM or our SAM need to be in order to get that. And instead, what I want a challenger brand to focus on is how do we figure out why people actually want to buy from you specifically, and why, like, how do they see you in relation to those bigger brands or your competitors that are those mainstays, in our kind of society, or whatever you want to call it. So I'm always wanting to start by looking at that. And then we use what their uniqueness is to become a more dominant player in the market. Because clearly, if they have customers enough to be considered a challenger brand, right? They didn't just start yesterday. They've got a customer base. There is something they're doing, and they're probably leveraging it to talk to a very specific group of people. But we just need to figure out how do we get to a little bit bigger of a group of people, not the whole world, not the whole country, but a little bit bigger, and figure out how do we adjust that language just a little bit when we're marketing to that broader group.
Yeah, I remember I was with a partner at the time, and we went and we were trying to sell to startups, and it's one of the reasons why we don't sell to startups anymore. But anyway, we go in and we're talking to the founder, and we said, well, how can we help you? And basically doing kind of like a strategic insights meeting.
Uh-huh.
And then I think he was getting frustrated. He was an engineer and he didn't quite
Sure.
understand why you needed to answer all these questions, and
Right.
how do we get a real understanding of who your customer is and
Yeah.
why do they want to buy from you.
Uh-huh.
And he was getting frustrated. He says, "Guy, listen, you just get me somebody in the door and I'll close them."
Right.
And
Exactly.
and I said, "Okay, so I'll bring my mom in here. Let me see if you can close them." Or
Right.
And you
Exactly.
said it,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
then finally he
Right.
realized that, oh, of
Yeah.
course, and now I know it. Now I know where you're going with that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny sometimes, and certainly then as a challenger brand, and he was trying to be a challenger brand.
Hmm.
We ended up not doing business with him, but
Right.
he was definitely trying to challenge, and he
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
I don't think he was going to get there.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the other thing that you bring it right up in this example, guys. There has to be an organizational and a personal willingness, right, on the part of the executive team to be open to change, right? If a company isn't open to change, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter how
yeah.
much data and insight I could provide them or how many things you could share with them about what you could do to help them. They're not going to change. And so I think sometimes that is the friction that I would almost say like newcomers to the executive team might find, in certain organizations that they join is like, how do I build that rapport? How do I build consensus that a change is needed and what the positive exponential upside of that change
Mhm.
would be, right? So yeah, it can sometimes be a waiting game.
Yeah, yeah.
At a certain point, though, it's going to get so painful that they either go out of business or they do get the help, right? So, unfortunately, that's not something you or I can control, but yeah,
Well,
it's
hopefully
something I've seen a lot.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully the VCs can give them the guidance that they need and the instructions that they need to say, go get somebody to help you out. You're not going to make it given what you're doing right now.
Yeah, hopefully, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Anastasia, I could go on forever, but I do have one last question for you, and that is, so what advice would you give a new up and coming marketer?
Do you mean like a marketer who's early in their career?
Yeah, very early in their career, maybe even
Yeah.
just getting out of college or switching over from
Yes.
non-marketing over into marketing.
Yeah. My advice would be to develop your decision making and strategic decision making skills. I think now, especially with AI, all of the executional skills of being a marketer are really, really available in different ways and in different levels. But the number one thing is developing a process for yourself that you will use throughout your entire career to really diagnose what is the marketing problem I need to solve right now in my role and what is missing that's not enabling me to solve that instantly, right? So developing that skill, that's not something AI can provide to you. That is the humanness of the situation. So yeah.
Yeah, I do have maybe a little pushback for you on that, and
Okay.
that is, if you're new and upcoming and you
Uh-huh.
need to learn about strategic decision making and the strategy and stuff like that, it's hard to get that when you're not working or if you're not exposed to it.
Sure.
But I do believe, though,
Yeah.
that AI can help to expose you to that and
Hmm.
challenge it. And I think there's
Yeah.
probably, and I don't think a young marketer would know how to set the prompts up, but, is to build a series of prompts that say, okay, you need to do, answer these kind of questions, or here, I'm going to challenge you with these questions, go get some
Yeah.
answers for it and figure out what
Yeah.
you would do.
Yeah, or I mean, I think what you're talking about and what I'm talking about is curiosity, right? Like I think that, I look back at my early career and I look back at other peers that I had that might have started in the same time and where did we go and end up in our marketing careers? I would attribute my trajectory into leadership in marketing, which was relatively fast paced. I would attribute that to curiosity because I was always asking, even if someone gave me just a small task to do that was very tactical because that's my job and I'm trying to learn the job of a marketer, I would always ask like, "Oh, what does this connect to?" Or I would say, "Oh, I think this connects to this." And, just being curious and talking to your colleagues about things, that is huge as well.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
maybe you're right because curiosity is underlying that,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I think there is generally a lot of curiosity. I think the challenge for the young marketer is then to actually be willing to invest time
Right.
in something, to really hone their skills or
Yeah.
at least become more curious or get more questions so that they can, be a lot more intelligent when they're doing an interview or
Yeah.
what have you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, Anastasia, thank you so much. Really great to have you on today, and I learned a lot. Market research and insights are so critical to making sure that your direction is really, really on target. So, where can folks reach out to you and learn more about you and your company?
Absolutely. Folks can go to ana.bio, ana.bio, and there's links on there to all the things I'm up to and all the ways to connect with me.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's a nice, easy one.
Yep.
Anna.bio. So
Yep.
fantastic. So for the audience, please stay tuned for many other videos in this series on the backstory of marketing and AI. And if you haven't already done so, like I said, please sign up for more episodes. And otherwise, go to marketingmachine.prorelevant.com and find out more about my upcoming book. Anna, thank you so much. Really great to speak with you today.
Thank you, Guy. I appreciate the opportunity.